Good morning. How's it going? Hey, Leandro. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Got kind of a weird happy. Yep. We've got a weird streaming schedule this week because I'm still like in the middle of my schedule transition at work. So we're streaming today and we're streaming tomorrow, but not Thursday or Friday because like a bunch of my meetings have already moved to my new schedule, even though I'm not on my new schedule yet. It's a little confusing, but it's causing some issues. But next week we should be on our new streaming schedule. Tuesday through Saturday. I think it's gonna be really good. Today we'll stream a little longer. Today and tomorrow we'll do a bit of longer streams, just to make up for the fact that we can't stream Thursday or Friday this week. But very ready for a new schedule here. Ready to try it out. We're still working on our ECS. I made a little bit of progress off stream. I try not to do too much. I've just been working on looking at how basic components would work. I'm pretty well settled, I think, in how our archetypes look. So I've just started working on like an add component function, which is mostly in place. The trick of the add component function is that if we don't know which archetype we're moving to, because if you add a component, you're moving to a new archetype, right? So we go through this series of steps where we grab our old archetype, we check its graph edges, which is basically just what are its connection points to neighboring archetypes that are just like if you add a component, you go to this archetype. If you remove a component, you go to this archetype. So we need a process here where it's like we need to basically get or create the new archetype. If we can get it, great. If we can get it if it's like already in the graph edge, in the add component, perfect. If it's not, we need to go look for it in our dictionary of just all the archetypes. If we don't find it, we need to create it. And so we do all of this. Ideally, the optimal path is we look for it and we find it, and then we just move on. But we're gonna need, today I'm gonna actually move the entity's data over, and that will give us a good idea of what maybe needs to change, where we're actually storing the entity data. And the entity data is being stored in the archetype in this list of collections, one component per collection. And the collection is just a list of chunks. So we'll need to store all that stuff. Chunks? Are ships being chunked? Ships are actually one of the only things not being chunked. Entities are being chunked just because it's better to do it that way. Just that way you get each chunk is like 16 KB. So it's like about the size of a cache. So we do that just kind of as a plan. I mean, we didn't really need to do this. We could have just made a single list that goes endlessly long, but I like chunks because our underlying data structure is memory, a memory T, which in this case is a memory byte, which gets cast to a span T for whatever type we actually need, given the type of the component that's stored there. But these memory groups, we want to declare them as a consistent 16 KB. We don't want to declare them and then resize them and resize them and resize them. Because for now, these are just backed by managed memory, but eventually we could get to the point where we're like, we want unmanaged memory for this. We want to just declare the memory we want for this in advance, and we'll manage it ourselves. For now, we're not worrying about that part, but we're trying to structure this in such a way that we could swap that out and not have to like fundamentally change our architecture here. Ships are not getting chunked in the same sense, and we actually need to make a data structure for this. We need to make like a dynamic buffer. Or maybe not dynamic. We need to make a buffer just for the ships. That is their like voxel grid. Their like 3D grid of blocks. I think we'll also use memory for this, but I gotta decide who's gonna own that memory, because it can't really be the ship. But no, we're gonna have a continuous block of memory for each ship that represents its like 3D grid. But yeah, those aren't gonna be chunks, or those blocks aren't gonna be entities themselves. We have to decide how we're gonna do that. They don't belong to the archetype, those buffers, the ship block buffers. So they can't be owned by the archetype. Yeah, I have to think about how I want to do that part. Doing those as entities doesn't make a lot of sense. It is something we could do, but it would probably be better to just not do that. I want my other mouse. Got two mice on my desk here. I want this one. There we go. This one has like a... I guess it doesn't really matter what it has. It's got some additional scroll bars that I can't take advantage of right now, but which I like. Alright, so we need to do this. This is on our list to do today. Actually move the entities data over to the new archetype. That's probably what we should just do. We've got a function to make an archetype if we need to. Can I make this an expression body? No. I could make this a single line. Use preferred braces style. Am I not? I listen to Writer too much. They're like, use preferred braces style. I'm like, tell me what it is. Tell me what the preferred braces style is. This seems fine. It's a little long, but it's very clear what's happening. All right, so this thing gets us our archetype, whether it creates it or it just pulls it from the graph. We've got our archetype. Now we need to move this entity and all of its data over to the new archetype. I've been following along with this creator, Sander Mertens or Sander, I'm not sure. Creator of Flex. They have a really great series. This is their series on making an ECS, and it has these nice little visuals. So we want to look at this archetype moves, and it has a really nice visual thing, which I think is also great for both me and for streaming this. It makes it. Hey Fez on SC2, have a great stream. Thank you. We're deep in this entity component system framework, which is very boring to work on, but we're doing it. It's going to be worth it. Having it will be great. Getting it is kind of a pain. So this is, so when we move an entity, we move it to the end of this new archetype. We're going to have to fill in the gap in the old archetype. So we need to do a few things to do that. The other thing is I've made this add component. Where is it? Yeah, I've made this add component carry a value, carry like a payload, so that we can add and set at the same time. I feel like we're always gonna want to do that. Like, I feel like structurally adding a component and not setting the value associated with it, like, I guess it could happen if you wanted to like lazily initialize something. But I want to do it this way, and this is a little more complicated than just a simple add component, where it's just add the component and it adds the component, and then we set the component on a different step. Yeah, so we need to pop the last entity up to the top of the old archetype. This is a lot more annoying and complicated using chunks, because we might have to move things across chunks. But it's good. This is a good exercise to see how we can do that easily. Archetype graph, that's what we were describing for caching things. Do they not go into any additional detail here? No, they don't. Oh, we do need a column map. I have that, I think. This is sparse and dense components. This isn't really what we are doing here. Sparse would be kind of like what we might end up doing for the blocks. Have a sparse storage for the block buffer. The buffer of like blocks that make up the 3D volume that is the ship. Might end up doing that as a sparse array. So we'll come back to this if we end up doing that. So there's an entity index. So we do want a dense array of entities, which is whether the entities are alive or dead. And entities are themselves a sparse set, that is correct. So we need to actually probably think about this too. But not quite yet. So we'll need to move them around as well. Let's come back to that. Thought there was a better example of doing this. Maybe it's here. Yeah, so this is what we do when we find an archetype, which is what we've implemented already, and then you cache the result. I think that's it. I don't think he talks about moving entities exactly. I think we just figure it out. All right, we just figure it out. We're in a good spot to do it. We just need to actually put in the work here. So if we're moving an entity from one archetype to another archetype, we should add it and clean it up. So let's add it and then remove it. That makes sense. Seems like the correct way to do it. We need to be able to figure out where in the archetype this entity is. We kind of maybe need a data structure for it because we need to know the archetype, which the entity currently knows. We might make this just a whole different, maybe we make like a storage. Maybe we make it like an address. Let's make an address, and an address will have an archetype, a collection, and a chunk index. A collection is a class, so it could theoretically just, well, it needs multiple collections. So it could be the archetype, the collection index, which is like the chunk that it's in, and then the index within the chunk. For now, let's just make an indices struct. And it will have a public, there'll be an interchunk index, an integer, and we'll have an intra chunk index. Should that stay on the entity? Probably. Entity's getting a little big, but I think it's fine because I think most components are going to be pretty big too. Or at least, you know, the smallest useful component that we're going to have on pretty much everything is like position, and a position is like a vector 3. So keeping an extra few integers on an entity is not a big deal, I don't think. Like this will have, well, I guess it has 5. Because it has the ID, which is 2 integers. It has the archetype, which is 1 reference. And then it has the indices. Which is another 2. Let's just make this a record struct. Series of buttons just turn this into a primary. Yeah, there we go. It's a little silly how we do this. There we go. anything else really. Super simple. An interchunk index and an intra chunk. So within the chunk, so between the chunks and within the chunk. I think that's fine. And the archetype has a list of its collections, which is its collection of chunks, and then it'll have each of those collections will have its list here. So we have this dictionary component integer collection index. Okay, so this is the collection index. Let's just plug in a component and figure out which collection corresponds to it. That's good. Chunk index is not something we need, I don't think. And I guess we could keep this here on the dictionary instead of storing it on the entity itself. Kind of like storing it on the entity itself. Although this reference might become obsolete. So if we move this, no, we can't store this here. So we might move it. I don't even know if we can even keep the archetype on the entity either. So we might, if we move it, we also need to update all of this. Shoot. Okay, yeah, we can store almost nothing on the entity. So we need to use lookups to figure this out. If anything, we don't even need this entity struct anymore. We can just go back to just having an entity ID, because they're the only ones that use the ID, because they're the only ones that change. I had a vision of having the archetypes also use the ID, where like we could clean them up and get rid of an archetype if it didn't have any entities associated with it anymore. But I'm moving away from that idea because it involves a lot more cleanup. I think I'd rather just have a quick check. Because there's a check either way. There's either a check to see if the archetype's ID is the same, like if it hasn't been incremented, its version number. Or we could just have another check to see if it's empty or not. So yeah. I think we're heading in that direction. So this indices thing needs to be a lookup. So on the archetype, we have our list of chunks of entities, and then we're going to have a dictionary here. Hey, Scott. How's it going? How was your weekend? Welcome back. We're going to call these chunk indices. It's going to be this. Call this entity indices. I like to name my dictionaries just key value, if possible. I guess by that logic, this would be component graph edges. Collection index, we might change this a little bit. But that's kind of what it is. It's almost a component index, not a collection index. Week's not too bad. Late night with work. Tired of getting through it. Oh, yeah. That is the way. Yeah, I have a Monday nights. I have a game dev co-working group that meets virtually, and I always stay up too late for that. Everyone's just hanging out and working. I feel like I got to do it too. Try get value component out variable graph edge. So we look up the archetype directly right now on the entity. We need to not do that. We need to have a list. It could be a dictionary, entity archetype, but if an entity, it should just be... should just be a list. So we're just going to index into it. We don't need to search into it. So this is entity archetypes. Entity archetype. So we don't need this dictionary then. I'd like to not use a dictionary if possible, because if we use a dictionary, we need to defend against like hash collisions. Like we're doing here. Where we like, just because we find an archetype in the dictionary, we still have to check to make sure that it's the same thing. So we need to do that anytime we search a dictionary for something. It's kind of annoying. Makes it kind of hard to find stuff sometimes. There's an argument to be made to like, if it's a small number of things, you might as well just search a list for it. Guess who made it to a Digital Iliad stream? Freshwater Fern. How's it going? How was your productivity yesterday? I missed your stream, I think. I'm at the office like once a week, and it's usually Mondays. Your productivity was weak. That's okay. Our productivity is also weak right now. We're making lots of decisions about how to structure our entity storage, and we do not feel confident about any of it. So instead of just calling the archetype on the entity, we go entity archetype indexed by the entity index. See, this is why we maybe want to move away from having entities be their own thing and just have, because if we're not, let's do that. So instead of entity, let's rename entity. Well, maybe we get rid of entity and rename ID entity ID, because we don't actually need, an entity is just an ID. We're not storing anything on it because that means we have to maintain that for all the references. You could have stale references, and we'd need to mark them dirty or something. We already have the version number for like when an entity ID is reassigned, but I don't want to have to like fix entity references everywhere. Okay, we're gonna get rid of entity. The entity as a concept here. All that's left is the ID, as it should be, honestly. System is gonna be mad at us. You're gonna quietly watch. I'm the background noise while you work. I appreciate that. That's what I'm going for. Thank you for the bits. Appreciate that. We definitely got the chill radio on today. It's the only radio station that has more than like an hour of music on it right now. I use Pretzel Rocks, and they're constantly removing music from their radio. I'm hoping they'll add it back, but there's like nothing to listen to right now, so we're listening to calming cinematics. Now I can afford to retire. I am ready to go. Let me get my Tommy Bahama t-shirt, or my Tommy Bahama shirt, my Jimmy Buffett records, and I'm gone. I'm gone down to Mexico. Maybe Costa Rica. It's making you sleepy, not gonna lie. Yeah, it's really chill. We're gonna need different music once we start streaming a little later in the day. This is gonna be less of a wake up morning stream. It's gonna become more of a stay strong through lunch kind of stream. Might need a new soundtrack for that. All right, so let's clean up everything. Normally, if you just rename a file, it will do all of that for you. But we renamed a file and then deleted the other file, and I don't think it can handle that to the same extent. So why are you upset with me? Oh, just other, not other dot. For you, it's past lunchtime. Well, then you're just heading to nap town either way. You know, when you get lunch, get sleepy afterwards. Exactly. That's your jam for today. You got a nice Spotify playlist. That's good. I don't know if I can roll with Spotify because it's all this multi-streaming to YouTube thing. I need to be very careful. My music is like licensed and like approved. Which is why I have a fairly limited music selection. These all the references to Entity? Wow. No, there's one in here somewhere. Oh no, it's just this stuff breaking. It's the soundtrack from Need for Speed, Most Wanted. Okay. That should keep you awake at least. Entity archetype. So it's entity archetype indexed by our entity ID dot index. Easy. Dot component graph edges. If anything, we don't need this pure list of entity IDs here. What we will eventually need is a dictionary. That's the sparse entity lookup. All right, so now if we want to move... So now if we want to move our entity, we should be ready to do that. Let's change this from ID to index. It doesn't have an ID in the same sense that the other things do. We should check to see that the composition equals the other one's composition. That's the actual check. We don't want to just check indexes between the composition, between the archetypes. We're gonna null. Can we just make the comparison? Yeah, that's what we're doing here. All right, so we've got our new archetype. We probably need to add some functionality here about initializing our collections. Position dot components dot length. No, we're not. We're just trying to get a list of this length. Oh, I guess we set the capacity instead. Public list, integer capacity. Yeah. Public list, no. Okay, so I should just say new list. New list. Why is this a list? This doesn't need to be a list. This can be an array. This doesn't change. Thanks, Leandro. Syntax, I've got some serious syntax struggles with C#. Still really getting the hang of it. There we go, beautiful. All right, so our new array of collection, or our new collection array. I should probably call it something else. I should probably call it like chunk list. Instead of calling it something super generic like collection. C# is weird since it's too similar to other languages but has some shenanigans. Yeah. I just get tripped up after spending a year just only doing GDScript. And my day job is mostly like JavaScript style stuff. Any particular programming language you're most comfortable in? No. No, Scott. I am not. I'm not like a trained programmer. I've just figured it out as I've gone along. So I get comfortable eventually, but it takes a long time. In 6 months to a year of using C# regularly, I'm sure I'll get pretty comfortable with it again. We're gonna call it collection for now. I still don't like that, but we're gonna do it for now. I guess in this case, do we want to store the entities as a separate list? I kind of like that. Rather than just making it like one of a number of these collections. I think I'll do that for now. But this also then doesn't need to be... Oh no, this one does need to be a list because we will need more lists. We'll need more chunks eventually. What I do need to store somewhere is like the maximum... Oh, here it is. Max items per chunk. Does that really need to be in the collection? That should probably be higher up. Collection references an archetype, that's fine. We have our list of chunks, that's fine. We have our component, also fine. Max items per chunk, this is good, but I feel like I also need this information. Unless I just add entities to the collection. We just call it an entity as like a component type 1 or type 0 or something like that. I don't know. I'm not totally sold on how we want to store our entities themselves. Not just not the components, but just the entity indices or the entities. Entity ID, the entity indices here makes sense. Look at a component here. Component has an index and a type. I kind of don't want to make entity like a component type 0 or whatever, because I thought I'd have, or index 0, because I thought I'd have index 0 be like invalid for everything. Like have it be the invalid type, or the invalid, I don't know what you want to call it. Because it's the default value for all of these, so you don't really want to have 0 assigned to anything. But we could have it be 1. Could be a component. But an entity isn't a component, so again, I think storing it separately is fine. We just need this max items per chunk thing on the archetype. Let's just store this here. And so it would be... So we need to figure out what our max items per chunk is. It's basically the size of... I basically need to go through everything and figure that out. Make this private and we'll just set it ourselves. Hydrate. Leandro with the hydrate here. Man, I meant to make bit sound effects over the weekend, and I didn't do it. Maybe I'll do it this weekend. Very inspired by Two Knitted Nerds setup where they have different sound effects play for different bit amounts. I have sound effects for most other notifications. Not channel point rewards. Maybe I should add those as well. Just helps to have a sound trigger when stuff happens because I'm not always watching. Oh yeah, I drank my coffee, but I didn't actually hydrate. Let me do the real hydrate here. Thank you, Leandro. I think I need to go back to a regular constructor. To explicit constructor. Because I want to initialize max items per chunk. The list of iMemory owners can be arbitrarily long. Because we get one of those per chunk, right? Yeah. That's going to be weird. I guess the collection is just data storage. Maybe it shouldn't be a class. It might as well be, I guess. How big is it? Reference, component, and maybe this could just be a struct. All right, so here we need to set our max. Set our max items per chunk. So we need to say for each component in composition dot components. We need to say variable largest component. Just type size, I don't know. Or just component. Size of largest component. Size of largest component. And I think I want to change my preferred variable naming. I don't mind just calling things var, but I would love it if the little type hint thing went away. But it yells at me if I just name it int. It's like, why are you naming it int? It's like, I'd like to know what type it is. Okay, so we just check if size of largest component equals component, we get size of component dot type is greater than size of largest component. Why is size of unhappy with me? Type does not have a predefined size. That's fine. Yeah, type does not have a predefined size. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I wish Visual Studios had something like that. We are not allowed to use other IDs other than VS at work. Oh, unfortunate. Yeah, I like Writer, but it is very opinionated, and I don't do well with a lot of visual noise. So it's like, it gets me sometimes. Like, it's like the green dots here. It's like, why aren't you using a link expression? It's like, I don't want to use a link expression. I'm not like, I don't want to use something I haven't like read up on and like can't really read very well. I mean, maybe I should learn how to like use link better, but I've never really used it in the past, so I don't want to use it now. But it's like, now's a great time to learn link. It's like I'm trying to do something here. All right. What do? I just put, can I say unsafe integer size of? Oh, unsafe is a context. So unsafe, put this in here. Okay, now it's yelling about this. Allow unsafe code in this project. Yeah. Probably a better way to do this, but this is what we're gonna do. Okay, cannot resolve symbol type. What? Oh. Oh. Maybe I don't need to use unsafe code here. I was trying to count the size of the type, not the actual thing. Maybe it still might actually not be happy with me about this. Yeah, I think it's still unhappy. Create type component, no. Okay, it still needs to be. Cannot resolve symbol component. That's perplexing. Component. Local variable component. Let's see if it's happy if I make this unsafe. We got ads in a minute. Okay, so it still can't resolve this keyword here, which doesn't make any sense. Component. It's this variable component. Unused local variable. How is it unused? Like, I don't mind making this unsafe. I just want to resolve this symbol first, the symbol issue. Oh, you like that format? Oh, yeah, I guess that's kind of cool. Yeah, I don't need the get type call because the type is a type. All right, there's something I don't understand. Let's try to figure this out. Size of an unknown type. Seems to be all with all to do with arrays. This is unfortunate. Maybe I need like a helper variable or something here. Does this work? I mean, I probably need to put it in an unsafe context. But I think this works. Seems fine. What's the warning here? Add unmanaged constraint to type parameter t of method getSize. This can be static. Move this over to a utility class. Okay, so we should be able to get size of an arbitrary type now. Type system.type must be valid unmanaged type. Simple numeric, blah, 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 blah. Enumeration type or struct type with all fields of unmanaged types. At any, can't do it this way. Type is a class. The type declaration. Got a compiler warning here. Let's see why this is a problem. What's this? Takes the address of, gets the size of, or declares a pointer to a managed type. Do we store it differently on here? Like, instead of type, you just say like put the where after. Fine, I don't want the component model. Maybe we fix this. Instead of trying to store a reference to the type, we just store the thing itself. Oh, this doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Hey, Doodliest Catch. It's going okay. We're kind of fighting the compiler a little bit here. Where we're trying to get the size of a type without knowing what the type is at compile time. And it doesn't seem to be happy with doing it one way. It's only yellow, but it says takes the address of, gets the size of, or declares a pointer to a managed type. If this is a compiler warning, it'd be cool if it, you know, sent me to somewhere. It takes the address of. It'd be also cool if I could just copy this line of code or text I cannot. Takes the address of. How are you doing? How are you doing, Dudeliest? Still the Dudeliest? Gets the size of. Really can't store any amount of text in my head at the time, or declares a pointer to a managed type. Still working on animation and weapon ammo logic for your FPS. Oh, nice. That's most of it, though, right? If it's an FPS. Your whole character is basically your arm and your weapon, right? Unless other people can also see you. Like it's a multiplayer thing. It's a little different, but... Alright, let's check this out. Can't make an unmanaged pointer of a managed object or of a struct that contains managed fields. Fair. There's no generic restraint that you can implement that would ensure compile time safety to make sure the struct would satisfy those requirements. As such, you can't make a pointer to a generic type. That's fine. We don't need to do that. Okay, so maybe this other way I'm doing this will actually work. Maybe we store these separately. Maybe instead of just component, we have component type and component index. Let's try that for a moment here. Well, let's do this first. To use a type. All my types are going to be unmanaged. Struct. No, it's the same thing. Yeah, you're getting that down. Then you'll be able to move on to finishing your first game loop. Hell yeah. If you don't want to get fancy with the anims, then it should be easier from now on. That sounds good. All right, I broke pretty much everything, so let us see if we can fix it. I guess maybe we do want to keep this to be the same. Let's try this again. Size of T type where T is unmanaged. Does this still need to be unsafe? I think it does. Yeah. That's fine. All right, I think we've satisfied our requirements here. Okay, well now component is stuck with having this type bit here, and now my dictionaries are getting confused. Bye, folks. No worries. Thanks for hanging out, Leandro. Have a great rest of your day. All right, so we've got our component T, which we're now enforcing so that we can have this type. Maybe we do need to split these up so we can treat these separately. Because now it's upset at me with my lists here. Doesn't want me to have lists of type T. It's like, this doesn't make any sense. You have a game you were making before this one? Sort of. It depends on how you mean that. I've done some jam games, but I've done them while working on this. There have been previous iterations of this game going pretty far back, and they looked pretty different in terms of design. I've done a number of various prototypes that have radically changed the direction I've gone in. Initially, this was not a sci-fi game. It was still very voxel based, but it was not sci-fi. Then I leaned into the voxel part and took it into a kind of more sci-fi direction in like full 3D voxel, and I spent a long time in Unity making like a voxel renderer. And then I decided that I wanted to do something different. And so I reimagined my voxel system as more of this isometric 3D thing that's more focused on little pixel art people and their movements. Basically, Cosmeteer came out, and I was like, I cannot do that in voxel 3D, and I cannot approach anything of that quality. So I changed direction again. So I like doing short jam games, but this one long project I've been working on for a long time, and it has had many faces. But underneath, it's still trying to do the same thing. All right, so what are we going to do about this? So composition. Is this meaningful? No. All right, yeah, I need to break up this component thing. We need to break this up. Like it'd work here. So this changes things for us a lot. This need to calculate the size of our type. I don't even need that parameter, do I? Well, how do I give it the size? Do I go back here and I say, in the voxel renderer, assume it's a buttload of work? Yeah, it is. You saw you working with it and wasn't sure of how it worked. You have to say, though, you're like a few months into this law. Yeah, the current one that I have is very different. The current one that I have is based on sprites. The one I had before was a proper, like, well, it wasn't even proper. It was weird. It was like a compute shader, voxel renderer deal. You have to say, though, you're like a few months into this. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, when you make a really long project like this, you kind of get bogged down. And I think as long as you're listening to it and you kind of go where it wants to go, I think it's good. Like, obviously, it's reinvented. This game has reinvented itself a number of times over the years. And this is just kind of its latest incarnation. And, like, some people would consider that a waste of time, but I think it's good. It means what I eventually end up with will hopefully be a good thing. Where am I calculating the size of this thing? Here. So we say get size, and then we say this. We say get size component dot type. Wait, why are you like? I have the component variable right here. I guess you don't do it like this. You do it like this. So you pass in the copy of it. It's just weird because it's just weird. Was the inspiration or direction always going to be like FTL? No, not at all. Originally, I wanted a voxel-like game about like phalanxes, like something more like classical Greek, like Greek phalanxes like crashing into each other, and they were like voxel based, and it would have looked really cool. But when I got far enough into the voxel system, I was like, I want to use the voxels to do something. So I got more into ship design, and it wildly transformed into a sci-fi game. And that's probably when this actual game kind of first materialized as an idea. And then I worked on that for a long time, and it was more focused on constructing the ships, like Cosmoteer style, or like Captain Jameson or Captain Forever, where you're like building these ships, and the ship blocks have like functionality and stuff, and you fight these ships. And then that became like this whole thing, and I got less interested in that, and I kind of realized all the interesting stuff that happens on a ship happens inside. It happens inside with the crew and what they're doing. And so I kind of flipped my game inside out, and I was like, I want to make this about what's happening inside the ship and not just building ships. And so I kind of got rid of the exterior voxel kind of system. I also switched game engines at that moment. That's when I switched from Unity to Godot, so that slowed me down a lot, but I think it was a good change. Wait, why is this still written this way? This is component size. This is probably short enough now that we can put it back to just on here. Yeah. All right, we're going to try this. We're going to try splitting the component struct into two different things. We're going to have a component index, which actually doesn't even need to be a component. We'll just have a component type. This is all it's going to be for the moment. We're going to try to use this instead. There are some things we could do here. Got this to make operators for me at one point, and I'm not sure how to get it to do that to me again. You're assuming Unity isn't good to use? It's fine. It's a fine engine. I use the ECS dots framework, which is why I'm kind of interested in doing my own ECS at this point. Yeah, it takes time to go from one engine to another, and now I'm kind of going back a little bit because I'm back in C# land here. I think the engine is fine. I more have a problem with the company than I do with the engine. Unity as a business is what I have a problem with. Although I definitely prefer Godot as an engine now that I've gotten really used to it. So this is gonna be a component type. So how do I do this now that I'm like committed to having this type thing here? Whatever you call this. It's not letting me use this anywhere now. Because it needs this. But this, you can't just put this here. It's upset about this. Type argument is missing. Yeah, but when I try to put a type in here, try to put the T in here, it's like it wants the specific type now. And that's not why we're doing this. Kind of backed myself into a corner here in a weird way. C# is great. Hey, Moth, how's it going? Someday you'll learn it and also learn to spell. No rush, no worries. All right. So why is this so upset with us? It's one of those things where if I had a better idea... No, I don't need that. So explain to me more about this. Not that. Explain to me more about this. What is this called? Like a type definition or something? Type parameter. Doodliest catch redeem stretch. Thank you, Doodliest. Let me get that. Get that stretch going. In a generic type or method definition, a type parameter is a placeholder for a specific type that a client specifies when they create an instance of the generic type IC. Generic class, such as generic list T, listed in Introduction to Generics, cannot be used as is because it is not really a type. It is more like a blueprint for a type. Yeah, okay. I see the problem here. To use generic list T, client code must declare and instantiate a constructed type by specifying a type argument inside the angle brackets. The type argument for this particular class can be any type recognized by the compiler. Yeah, for us, it's unmanaged. So I cannot instantiate a list of type T. I see. I thought I was trying to get around that by having this T type. Having it be like this. But I can't do that. But if I go back to the way this was before, which is unqualify this, and list this as a type, as a reference to a type, I need to read more on this, the type class. Everything else inherits from this, right? I was using this to avoid the generic thing. Do I need to implement this? No, because it just gets replaced with the actual type. Is there a way to see what its size is from here? Or do I need to get the type handle? Gets the handle for the current type. What's this? No, this is I don't need a handle. I just need to get the type. What are you trying to do? You know, we're doing this thing. So when we add a component to an archetype, and actually basically a lot of the time, oh God, if we add a large component to an archetype and that changes the chunk, we basically need to calculate how many structs can fit in a chunk. And to do that, we need to get the size of each type, but the get size part is getting a little complicated. So we go over here and we get size. So if we try to do this with just type, with just a type here, get rid of this part. Import system. Using system. Returning size of type is not happy about this. But what if I say type.getType? It doesn't seem to like that either. So we were getting around it by passing the T. But that causes other problems because that forces a bunch of other stuff to be annoying. Get type gets the current type. So why couldn't I... Gets the current type. Get size should take an argument of a type I define. Yes, but I'm not and that's fine. So here's how we had it and it was working. This is all fine. Get size T, where T is a type, where T is unmanaged. It's all happy with this. The problem then is to make this work. I had changed component to also follow those rules, where we would have like component T, you know, T type. But maybe that's not what we do. Maybe we need to split it so that this is like this. And then we just pass. Let's see if we can split the difference here. Let's see if we can say get size component dot type. Yeah, so I can't guarantee that type is unmanaged. It's a problem. Is the problem here. And it needs to be guaranteed that that's the case. That type is a whole other thing for C#, but not generic. Why generic? Well, it's because we don't know what type we're dealing with. It could be any type. It could be position, direction, could be any number of types. We don't know specifically what type we're passing it. So that's why this component struct exists, where this component would have an index and it would define a type. But I guess this is not the correct way to do this in C#. I thought this would be a good way to do it. It seems like it should be this. So it seems like it should be this thing. This is where it's pushing us. Should get size accept a component type or that component struct? I broke it out into this where it was just the component type as a value, because the problem is I'm unable to then store my list of components because we don't define the type. So I can't just store my generic list of like all my components that each have their own type, because it's expecting a component of a specific type now. So I'm trying to split it up. So I thought maybe if component type follows this rule and then we have something else that doesn't, we could figure it out. But that's not really, because I need a reference to this at some point. I need to be able to look this up, like in a dictionary or something, like by its index or something like that. It's maybe something I need to research more. Because this is all happy. We're giving it a type. We're giving it a specific type. Or a thing of a specific type. We could take off the unmanaged requirement here. But now it's giving us a compiler error. Or not a compiler error. It's giving us a compiler warning, which is this takes the address of, gets the size of, or declares a pointer to a managed type. It doesn't, because I'm not going to be using this stuff, but I can't guarantee it. You don't like that get size with the generic? Well, what if we do this? What if we do this differently? What if we put the get size on the type? No, that won't really work. Kind of need to do it like this. We could use an interface. We could put a get type or a get size function on each concrete component. Yeah, okay, you know, what about an interface I have size? Yeah, I think we're thinking in the same direction. And then so we don't use this generic component thing as much as we like take an actual concrete position and we say sizable or something. I don't know. That's not the right word, but I get size. And we implement that. Yeah, maybe we make it an interface. And we put that on here. And then back in our archetype, we would just basically say component. Well, that doesn't solve all of our problems, which is this. I don't mind the utility, the generic get size utility, but then how do we store our list of components if they have these type definitions? Like, how do we store this now? How do we store a list of different components? Unless we end up storing just a list of interfaces like I component or something like that. The generic tiers. Yeah, I love that. The TT. Ah, sad. Sad panda. List I have size. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's our only choice. I think I'll end up making an I component interface. Generic tiers. I know, I hate it so much. I thought we'd mostly dodged the need for generics by using like our I mean, we're still using generics, but like I liked our solution for chunks, where chunks was just a byte, a collection of bytes, and then we'd reinterpret it based on the generic, based on which definite type we have. I thought that was clever, but we're being a bit less clever here. In fact, this could probably be unmanaged, right? We're essentially declaring that all of our component types are unmanaged. All right. Big refactor time, I guess. So we don't really need this. All right, let's make our I component, I guess. How are you doing, Eno? How's your week been? Or I guess it's just started. How was your weekend? Want to avoid boxing. Is there a way to do that for this? Because our issue is with our dictionaries. So we have this here. We don't do this. We don't do this. When iComponent implements a get size, it'll probably implement a couple other things, but it implements this. You finally solved a problem you had for the last 2 years. Now you kind of don't know what to do. Oh no. Yeah, it sounds like a rest on your laurels kind of situation. All right, let's rethink our list of components. Why do we have a list of components? What purpose does that serve? Obviously, we want to be able to... I like this dictionary lookup where you plug in a component. And you get a list of the archetypes. We can get around this to an extent by having this be an index. So it'd be just an index, and you look in based on the component index, and you get a list of archetypes with that component index. Same thing, a composition could just be a list of component indexes. And our components could actually have a static list of indexes. Like, that's obviously not the best, but it could be the way we do this. I'm maybe thinking we don't actually need to do any of this. I'm thinking that there's maybe a way around this. Let's see if we can untangle this. Component type T, T value, or T is unmanaged. We may still need this somewhere. But if we need to define the T, we might as well just go straight to it, right? Like if our T is just a position, this T could just have a static. I mean, the T knows what it is, and it could just have a static index here. I mean, we'd still like a list of all components. Would be nice to have. I guess that list could be iComponent. And we probably don't need to refer to that list very often, so I guess it doesn't terribly matter if we're boxing it, because we're pulling an iComponent out of the list. Could we say something like this? List of... Oh. Yeah, it'd be a list of iComponent. I guess this is the way we do it. If we want to do this. I'm not convinced. I don't love that. Composition, remove component. But here, see the commands here, these could be like this, component T. Right? Yeah. So we could have type sensitive functions like this. This is not so great, this new composition thing. I have to figure out how what composition is going to be made of. It should probably just be made up of component indexes. Or component ID. Because it's relying on an array of components that are these generic things. Let's break component up for now. So we can go from a component index to a list of all the archetypes that have that component index. Composition could similarly be made up of component indexes. Component indices here. Let's move these to the correct folder. Let's go to composition. So instead of a list of components, it's going to be a list of component indexes. All right, so how do we make this? So this becomes a new thing of components. Maybe we don't need to know the type of the component unless we're actually dealing with it. And we can have it be static, which I think is fine. We can just pre-assign. We can just say position has index 1, direction has index 2, or whatever. We can just be very definitive about it. Is component IEnumerable? Oh, it's IComparable. Is that a requirement? Maybe we have component size just be a thing that we store. Instead of storing the actual type somewhere. I guess we need to store that somewhere. Because we need to know what size, what type we're casting to. I guess at some point we'll have the interface and we'll just eat it. Wherever we can figure out how to put the actual type information at whatever the slowest part of the process, not the slowest, but the least performance impactful part of it. IEnumerable. Ah, I see. Component index. There we go. Right. This is okay for now. This we don't need. This type specific thing. We might end up doing something like that though. But not here. That might be for the add component and the remove component. Maybe you pass the actual component in. Because the system would know what components it operates on. So the systems could know what the components are, and they could just pass those around. That's maybe how we do this. Okay, here's this without any... I need to add these static operators here to this, and I don't remember how to do it. Unless record structs just come with that information. Let's see. Record structs come with a lot. Let's see what we get here for free. Okay, you get an equals and a not equals. I want a different public stat. I want some other. I want this one. Static operator. How did I get Ryder to do this for me last time? Wasn't that... I don't remember how I did this. I'm gonna look into this. We're gonna add some kind of just messing around right now. else? Yeah, who cares? Just wanted to remove some of the annoying things about going back and forth between the component index and the value, but I don't remember how to do that. It's these public static implicit operators, yeah, or explicit. The implicit one is when we go to a built-in type, and the explicit one is when we go the other way. You know, it just drops the single phrase election day in the chat. It's true. That is what it is. All right, so it's these. These are what I wanted. Public, static, implicit, operate. There we go. Now it'll do it for me. Oh, that can be implicit? Doesn't have to be explicit? These. I wanted these. Makes it a little easier to plug these around. Don't need this, though, I guess. A collection could have a specific type. Then we just get back to the same problem about how do you have a list of collections of definite types, so they shouldn't. They can know their index. This arguably shouldn't be, well, it has references in it, so yeah, let's keep it as class. Trying to find a live YouTube news channel, but all you could find looks sketchy. Yeah, I would not. There's really no reason to watch that stuff. Like maybe check once after in the evening after they've counted everything. But it's really unhelpful and stressful, I think, to just try to follow it all day. All right, let's try to get rid of these compiler errors at least. All right, so the graph edges, archetypes component graph edges thing still isn't right. Where's the archetype? So when we make an archetype, we're going to need to go through all of the components in the archetype and figure it out. This is where we'll probably do our slow lookup into like a a dictionary of like interfaces of components that they're stored by their interface. So we can't really do this. Let's hide this for now just so we get rid of the error. Fix this stuff shortly. Just not yet. For almost all the lookups, we're just going to use the component index. Oh, so this isn't the component index. This is like collection index. On an index collection into collection. My naming convention has failed here. Component index, collection index. That's horribly named, but it is accurate. Most of the, oh Lord, how did I do that? Zoomed in too far. This is normally what we get, yeah. Right, I feel like that's all of them. Let's see if this runs. Okay, seems to run, so it seems like we sorted it. All right, that pleases me. Be able to like keep this working while we're working on the other stuff. Keep this functioning. So I can just do what we're working towards. Excuse me. I gotta get to work. I thought I'd go a little longer today, but kind of tired. Hitting walls like that tends to do that to me. Makes me a bit tired. I need to figure out a better way of handling the door transparency. I don't like this. I think just having an outline on the floor would be good, which we could easily do with the auto tiling system. Having an outline on the floor where the door is. We would need to be able to show whether the door was open or not. But I think that's pretty easy to do. I don't like this semi-transparent look. It's simple, so we're not going to change it at the moment, but I would like something better. Figure this out. All right, I think that's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow, same time. Next week we'll have our new schedule. It's gonna be much longer, much more consistent. Very excited. I'll try to keep doing more of this busy work off stream today, and hopefully I'll have a better idea of how I want to implement concrete, referencing these generic components here in a way that's better. But yeah, I appreciate everyone for tuning in today. It's been kind of a chill day, but I've enjoyed it as much as I could, you know. We've been tackling some weird stuff, but we'll get through it soon. I'm excited once this ECS is up and we can just start assembling things. It's going to really speed up the design phase of the game, I think. But it's some rough going right now as we figure it out. But the future is looking bright, and I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out, Moth, Doodliest Catch, Leandro, Scott, Fern. Thanks for stopping by. Really appreciated that. We'll pick it up tomorrow. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks, Scott. Goodbye.